Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Miss Linda C. Jones YouTube variety channel. I am coming to you live from my absolutely beautiful historic hometown of New Orleans, Louisiana. And you've just been listening to a little bit of the wonderful, incredible jazz artist himself, Jelly Roll Morton, playing what's known as the Crave. So welcome back to my YouTube variety channel. The title of this video is Jelly Roll Morton Excerpts from a book called Jelly's Blues. So I'd like to continue. This is also part 3. I'll add that in a little bit, but I'd like to continue reading from this wonderful book that was given to me this past Wednesday by another musician who's poured his heart and soul and life and being into this city as a professional musician as I have. And so I know with all my heart that this book resonates with his soul and mine as we know so one another well. So originally when I began this little series as it takes on a life of its own, I read the entirety of the preface. So let me share with you again the title of the book. It's called Jelly's Blues, The Life, Music, and Redemption of Jelly Roll Morton. The authors are Howard Reich and William Gaines. So I read the entirety of the preface the other day. And then I had thought about reading the entire book and doing a series that way, like reading an entire chapter. And then I thought it may be better, once I read the entirety of the preface, to go through the book and pick out certain chapters, well, maybe all of the chapters, but to pick out certain excerpts from each chapter and do a little commentary before and after. And that's how I think at this point, unless I decide differently. You know, I am an artist, and we artists are kind of out there with our own palette and our own set of paintbrushes, if you will. That's part of being a creator. That's how we were created to create. So at this point, I think I'll do it that way. And so if this book inspires you to learn more about Jelly Roll Morton, to listen to his music if you've never listened to it, or to go downtown and view all of the archives in the New Orleans Historic Collection in New Orleans, however it is that this video may inspire you, in addition to hopefully being able to find a copy of this book that I am so incredibly grateful to have. So maybe it will inspire you to get the book, or to learn more about Jelly Roll Morton, or all of the above. I'm going to continue reading some excerpts from chapter 1 entitled The District, but just to kind of review a little bit, just to go back and to review a little bit about this book. As a native New Orleanian who shares so much on my channel, my own music, my original music, my cover music, and interviews with New Orleanian entrepreneurs and all of the above, the history of this city is absolutely fascinating to me. And so from my opinion, from my thoughts, from my introspection on this book, it so beautifully lays out the scenes. You are captured by the fact that it begins in 1904 at the turn of the century. So what an interesting time that was anyway. We learned in the previous excerpts that I read that New Orleans at that time, believe it or not, was actually thought of as an economic capital of the South. That's pretty powerful in and of itself, an economic capital of the South. And as they name all the streets, I'm like, wow, myself, my family, my friends, we have walked those streets, we know those streets, we have driven those streets. And to go back in time, as this book takes you back in time, I would say one of the big things that I'm getting, as an artist myself, is that as Jelly Roll Morton was an artist, he was being given inspiration by all that he was surrounded by, the fascinating vibrational frequency that has always been New Orleans in and of itself. So that was already present. New Orleans has always had this extraordinary heartbeat, just this heartbeat. And if you're not a native New Orleanian and you come here to visit over and over again, I hear from family who may not be from here, as myself and my immediate family are, or friends who come here, they say that they take New Orleans with them and New Orleans remains in their heart. Some people so much so that they come here and they decide to become New Orleanians. That is the magic of this city. And when you put all of that together with incredible musicians, and New Orleans is second to none in extraordinarily, phenomenally talented musicians, you put all that together and it's like, wow, you're getting the history of this incredible man along with the sights and sounds that inspired him. And then he, in turn, did the same thing because he became part of the sights and sounds inspiring others. So I think that's pretty powerful. So that would be my pre commentary. So on page 12 of Jelly's Blues in chapter 1, The District, I love this paragraph that says, the ambiance inspired a red hot music, which became still more brilliant and rhythmically free at the Frenchman's and After Hours Saloon nearby at the corner of Bienville and Villeray. Yes, indeed. I mean, wow. After working or catching Joe Oliver at the Big 25 in Franklin or Iberville, or hosting a few at Billy Phillips' place around the corner from Tom Anderson's, the New Orleans professors headed for Frenchman's. So that's giving you the vibe of all of these different things that they did. It says this was where they gambled, they drank, they took turns at the piano. Um, they did a myriad of things. They played the piano for money. Here they played for each other for art. So music lovers, insomniacs, and late night people swarmed. Late night women swarmed the place. It was also known as a sort of hothouse for a newly emerging sound that still had no particular name except for quote unquote New Orleans music. In the front room, a bar and a nearby piano kept spirits high, while a table in the back room accommodated food, drink, and cards. Morton went so far as to call this, quote unquote, the place where jazz originated, the birth of an art form attended by people who were dripping in diamonds and delivered by bone-tired musicians with a root of whatever they were winding down with. I'll let you read the book to read what they say about that. But obviously you get the point that it was wild, right? It was wild, it was intense, and out of all of that, jazz was born. Now, if we go over to the next page, on page 13, an interesting little side note about his family, and I have some commentary about that I think is relatable to so many professional artists and what they go through at one time or another in terms of their art becoming a way that they make a living, and how sadly to this day, it still isn't respected the way it should be, whether someone's making a lot of money with it or not. And that's really sad because, in my opinion, when you think about what art gives to the world, what music, that art form, and so many art forms give to the world, can you imagine what our world would be without music, without that art form or others? And so when you think that, musicians and so many other artists, often live in poverty to produce their art form, live without having everything they need, to produce their art form. They're giving everything they have in their work, which is music. And sadly, quite often, people are not respected in this art form unless they've quote unquote made it big with a huge recording contract, right? That's not always the case. And let me make that clear. So many people appreciate what someone does musically. But I think this is something that has been going on for, as long as time itself. And I've often pondered this with other musician friends of mine. Could it be because, people see that you're doing something you enjoy, and in their minds, work has to be drudgery? I mean, make no mistake, music is still a lot of hard work. You are putting in a tremendous amount of energy. You are, and you get tired just like anybody else at any other job. But it is your passion. It is what God placed within you, and I could go on and on about that. But on page 13, I'm going to read this paragraph that attests to a little bit of that. It says, and this is from the book, that a respectable Creole Louisianian of mixed European and African origin had descended into this forbidden world, embracing it, reveling in it, and earning from it what seemed to him a fortune, proved a source of shame to Morton's middle-class family. So much, in fact, that they would disown him once they realized the kind of musician he was becoming. But for Morton, doubly blessed with at least his musical education and an innate ability to play any music by ear that he heard, there was no better way to proceed. The gig was too lucrative, the nightlife too alluring, the music too hot to resist. So, I want to do a little commentary here before proceeding. I know in so many conversations with professional musicians such as myself, it's the age-old conversation about being paid enough, being respected for your craft, you know, being able to make a living at your work that takes up all of your time, and knowing that within your heart you can and must do this, that God is directing you to do this. It is a paradox in some ways, and it is perhaps a source of torment. It causes you to feel torn, because music and any art form should receive respect and should be elevated with absolutely no issue whatsoever from someone making a living at it. Musicians work very hard. I know that I do. And there you have it. That was one of the many things that Jelly Roll had to overcome. He knew that his passion for playing this music had to be created. He knew that. He knew unequivocally there was nothing else that he could do but that. I want to read a little bit more of someone that I read about in the beginning of the video, a gentleman by the name of Roy Carew, who was an admirer of jelly rolls. It says, the Frenchman's was his conservatory, the district his concert hall, and young Roy Carew his admirer. Morton did not know that Carew heard him on that summer night in 1904. And going to the next page now, page 14. Let me restart that. That sentence. Morton did not know that Carew heard him on that summer night in 1904. The two young men did not meet, but Morton's music earned him an unsung champion in Carew, who 3 decades later would try to break Morton's terrible fall. Wow, how powerful is that? I'm going to wrap it up there for this particular video, because I'm trying to keep these videos right at about 18 minutes, like under 20 minutes, so that they'll upload quickly. And I may go back in and include another link of some of Jelly Roll's music in the description. But there you have some of the beginnings of what was happening at the turn of the century, 1904, New Orleans, and someone who would play this role, who would try to help Morton in what he had gone through. And you see at that time frame, he was already rising above the fact that his music was not being appreciated by people, that were so close to him, but being appreciated and admired the world over by others. Isn't that how it goes, right? Isn't that how it goes? So I will be continuing this little series every time I have about 20 minutes or less. I will do some excerpts from this book. And as I said, I think it's best that I do some paragraphs and some excerpts to talk about it and take you through the book that way. Again, hopefully to inspire you to read the entirety of the book. I'm reading the entirety of the book on my own, but I'm highlighting some paragraphs that I want to bring to life that I think tells that tells another story in terms of my interpretation. But again, this amazing book is Jelly's Blues, The Life, Music, and Redemption of Jelly Roll Morton. The authors are Howard Reich and William Gaines, and again, it's called Jelly's Blues. If you're just happening to happen upon my channel, please consider subscribing. It's a variety channel. I have my original music, cover songs, and family, faith, friends, community, so much about the history of New Orleans, including the phenomenal Mr. Jelly Roll Morton. All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Peace out and God bless. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.